Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the CAV Sports Podcast. It's your host with the most, Chris. I hope everyone's having an exciting day today. I know I am having a great time. It's summer. The weather's a little warmer, getting to wear shorts, kind of being outside a little bit more. Very exciting. I've actually picked up basketball a little bit more. I've been hooping with a couple buddies of mine at the gym, so that's been really fun to get into. But obviously, you guys are not here for my personal life. Let's go into the podcast. But first, before we start the podcast, I do want to give it a little disclaimer because I did see this on social media and people commenting and stuff about this information. So, earlier this past week, I did get a comment saying that I've been reporting on late news or stuff that has already happened. Here's the thing on how this podcast works, for how I run it. So, how I run the podcast is that I cover topics that I want to talk about. Whether they're late or not is a discretion for me. So, when topics happen and when I find out topics, to cover on this podcast, sometimes they've happened after I've already shot the episode. So, for example, in this episode, we're going to talk about Game 2 with the Heat and the Nuggets. Now, obviously, that game already happened about last week, and I'm recording the episode as of today of this recording on Wednesday. So, obviously, the game has already happened, and it was about a while back, and, people have already talked about it, which is fine. I get that. But I don't record every day for the podcast. I don't make, twice a week, 3 times a week podcast episodes to cover everything. It's a little bit hard for me because I do have stuff outside of the podcast that I do. I have a job that I work, and then also I have school that I attend that I'm trying to finish so that way I can, graduate and can be completely done with that part and chapter of my life. So that's the other stuff that I have on top of doing the podcast. The podcast is something I do, weekly. I do one episode just because that's when I realistically have enough time to make episodes. And that's when I realistically can sit down, see what topics I want to cover, and then go that route. So if it's like a issue that, this has already happened, this is late news, whatever, I'm sorry, but how I do the podcast, it's not an everyday thing. This is not something that makes me, money to where I'm comfortable and I can just go and do this 3 or 4 times a week. It's not. I have other stuff that I have to get to. So the podcast, like I said, I run it, it's weekly. It's at least once a week is when I get episodes done. And I'm the one that runs everything. So I'm the one that makes the video for YouTube. I add the little promotions that I do. I'm the one that uploads it to Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and all that good stuff. And then I also upload it on my social medias, which, by the way, if you're not following me, follow me at CAV Sports or CAV Sports Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that good stuff. So make sure you guys follow me there. But I'm the one that does it all, and I have to find time to do it. So like, for example, I talked about the Jimmy Garoppolo thing, and they said that was very late. And I get that. It may have been late news, but that's when I decided to talk about it. Because that's when I talked about it. Now, the Garoppolo thing was actually, I believe it was covered, that week or, a day after the podcast aired, or, about a day or two before the podcast was shot. So that's when I first kind of heard of the story. So that's another thing, is that some stories is when I hear about it. If it's late, it's late. But there's sometimes, there's nothing I can do, especially if I've already shot the episode and something has already happened, or if something happened and I haven't shot the episode just yet, and it could be, days prior or whatever. So keep that in mind when you kind of listen to the podcast, and kind of keep in mind that this is weekly, and this is kind of when I find stuff to talk about, I find stuff to talk about. And that's the route I go, and that's what I'm going to continue to do until I can find more time to actually sit here and do maybe a couple episodes. But until then, I'm still going to run the podcast how I want to run it. I'm still going to cover topics that I want to talk about, whether they're late or not. Sometimes it's something I do want to talk about, like the Garoppolo thing. So keep that in mind when you listen to the podcast and you say, hey, wasn't this recorded? Wasn't the Heat and Nuggets game last week? Yes, but the game was played literally the next day after the podcast was recorded. And I believe in the last episode, I said I talked about Game 1, which was days, about close to a week prior after Game 1 was finished. So keep that in mind whenever you listen and you say, hey, like, wasn't this about a while back? And yes, I do agree, it has been a while back, but that's when this is the time I have to be able to make content for you, for the podcast and for you guys. So that's exactly when they're gonna get talked about. It's just like I said, I have way too much stuff that's outside of the podcast that I do, and schooling, work, all that good stuff. So this is around like once a week is a perfect time for me to actually sit down, write down topics, and look at stuff and go about it that way. So please keep that in mind when you're listening to the podcast, and kind of think about it in that perspective, is that when you have other stuff going on that you kind of want to finish, or you want to get out of the way first before you do something else, that's how I work. So for example, I want to get my schoolwork done and I want to get work off of my plate before I come here and start doing episodes and stuff like that, and podcast stuff. So keep that in mind, please. Going forward, that's how it's going to run until I officially announce that I am going to be doing more, which hopefully that'll be soon after school is finally completed. Maybe I'll have a little bit more time to sit down and maybe do a couple more episodes, but we'll see what happens there. Like next week, there's going to be a two episode week, because I'm going to do one when I usually do one, and then I'm having the special edition one at West Texas Comic Con with Butterbean the Boxer as a special guest. It's a live audience one. I hope anyone out there in the Lubbock area can make it out. It's at the Lubbock Memorial Civic Center, so make sure you guys head on out there. I will be there June 17th with a live episode of the CAV Sports Podcast with special guest Butterbean. But just to wrap it up, some stuff has already happened or happened prior to the episode, and I just haven't shot anything yet. It happens. Some people are late. Even other podcasters are late on stuff. Some shows are late on stuff. It's kind of, sometimes it just depends on when you get to it. And that's kind of the reality with me, at least how I do the podcast and how I shoot stuff. Because, like I said, I can't get to everything on time because this isn't something I do daily. This is something I have to plan to make time and write out my stuff for the podcast. And this is stuff I want to talk about. So keep that in mind going forward with the podcast. Alrighty, so enough disclaimer talk. I want to talk about something that I caught my eye, I believe, yesterday. I was playing basketball with a buddy of mine. Shout out to my man Tito, who told me this story when we were playing basketball. The PGA Tour and LIV Golf have officially merged together. Here's my reaction to this whole story when I found out. How in the world did this happen? Like, how did PGA and LIV Golf come together and decide to do that? Because okay, so here's the thing. So I learned about why the other golf organization was formed, because obviously they're going to pay their golfers more money. They have more to get them there. They're bringing in bigger names. They even stole golfers from the PGA Tour and brought them in so they can play in their professional golf league. And it was one of the craziest things, because we did not think that another organization would step up to the PGA, because the PGA Tour, the Masters, all that stuff is like top tier. It's up here, and a lot of organizations would dare to even try to even compete with that. We've seen it with the XFL years ago, not this one, but like years ago, whenever it first started. They try to compete with the NFL, and it's just really hard. It's the same way with not even just sports perspective here, but even TV broadcasting. It's hard to put shows or debut like pilot episodes or release new episodes to the public on, say, Monday nights or Thursday nights even, because during football season. Because why? Everyone's gonna watch Monday Night Football. Everyone's gonna watch Thursday Night Football, unless it's on Amazon, because that was not fun for anybody. But you guys get my point here. You're gonna more than likely watch the football games more than you're probably gonna want to watch, I don't know, like a show that's coming out like Young Sheldon. If say they release their episodes on Thursday, what are you gonna watch? The new episode of Young Sheldon, or you're going to watch football? It's kind of like one of those comparisons thing. Like I said, unless it's on Amazon, probably Young Sheldon's going to win. But either way, it's still crazy that they were able to merge and come together. The crazier part was that none of the golfers were informed that the merger was happening. I forgot which golfer it was. I know it was one of the main ones. I'm blanking on his name, but he commented saying, "I had no idea this was even on the table," and they are mad. They are furious because some of the golfers that left the PGA went to LIV Golf because they were going to make more money. In the end, they were going to make more golfing with them than they were with the PGA, and some of them even liked the other organization more than the PGA. So when they announced the merger, it was just something I never would have saw coming because they absolutely hate each other. They've stolen golfers from each organization, a little bit more from the other, from some people, a lot of people more have jumped ship from PGA to the other organization. So when you think of it like that, that's why I think it's so crazy that they were able to make this work or even think of a merger, because they hated each other's guts for such a long time and they were not agreeing. PGA was trying so hard to sign a bunch of new golfers, and they were trying to put their hand on their foot on their metaphorical giant foot and make sure they trap a lot of golfers before someone else comes and picks them up, because now they have competition and some of them can pay the money, like the Saudi Arabia organization. So this is just a big development story that I heard yesterday. So like I said, shout out to my man Tito for telling me. But to me, it was crazy to think that this would even be possible, that they were actually going to try a merger and see where it goes. I'm pretty sure it's because PGA. I don't think PGA is losing viewers, because I've seen a lot of people love to watch golf. I'll watch the Masters every now and then, depending on who's playing in the Masters. I'll watch it, but other than that, really, I know there's a big fan base right now for golf. A lot of people have been following it. My parents are a good example of that. They've been following golf. They've been, into it. A lot of friends of mine, some classmates, colleagues have been paying close attention to the PGA, and as they should, because PGA is probably one of the bigger organizations, out there. So now that this merger has begun, now they're going to get the golfers from the LIV organization, and now they're coming to the PGA, and some of them left PGA because they didn't want to be there anymore. It's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen. I'm pretty sure they're going to play because they're going to want the prize money, and I mean, hey, blood money talks. That's all I got to say. Blood money talks. And it talks real big and really loud when it looks real good in your pocket. Alrighty, so moving on for the PGA and the news there, let's head on over to the NBA. Like I said,
interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Hey everybody, Chris from the CAV Sports Podcast, and I want to give you guys a major announcement. The CAV Sports Podcast will have a live episode. Join me June 16th through the 18th at the Lubbock Memorial Civic Center for West Texas Comic-Con. Make sure to get your tickets today. And on June 17th, we will be having a special taping of the CAV Sports Podcast with special guest Butterbean the Boxer. I want to thank Goldmine Collectibles and West Texas Comic-Con for even making this happen. I'm super excited. Remember, June 17th at the Lubbock Memorial Civic Center, live, the CAV Sports Podcast will be going with special guest Butterbean. See you there. Like I said, we're going to be covering Game 2. The Heat beat the Nuggets 111-108. I'm a little shocked because it was in Denver. I figured that the Heat would win more at home than they would in Denver, especially since role players typically do better at home because they're a little bit more comfortable there. But here's the thing. The Heat are going into the series with that I don't care mindset. They're like, why not? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we don't care if we win or lose. We still got here. We went through the whole Eastern Conference. We've put up fights against the Bucks, the Knicks, the Celtics. We've seen them, even after they lost their first play-in game and they were about to get eliminated, they still clawed their way back into the finals this year. So seeing them that they pulled this win off was honestly incredible, because after the first game, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, they're going to probably go back and forth and the Nuggets are going to win Game 5 or 6, either way. But here's the thing. In this game, 3 people went over 20 points for the Miami Heat. Butler 21, Bam 21, and Vincent 23. So those, Bam Adebayo already had a great game in Game 1. In this game, he repeating it. And now Jimmy Butler and Vincent stepping up. And just that combination of what they're able to do. And one of the crazier things is that they flustered Jokic, on the defensive end. They were flushed, on defense, he was getting frustrated because they figured out a little offense that was able to kind of mess up Jokic, and kind of give him different looks, whatever. They came up with a great, scheme to kind of not minimize Jokic, but throw him off to figure out, kind of think a little bit more of what he's going to want to do going forward. And they were able to pull it away with that win. Because watch, Jokic had 41 points. So obviously he wasn't the problem. He's still, everyone's argued he's the best player in the world right now. And I can concur with that. I think between him, it's like him and Giannis. I think Giannis is the closest, but I think Jokic right now has been proving he's been pretty good, especially since he's been more available than Giannis and Embiid. But he had 41 points, so he did fine. But the rest of the team, not so much. I mean, aside of Jamal Murray, who had 18, but he was 7 for 15, KCP only had 6, and Michael Porter Jr. only had 5, which those players usually step up in good games. I think Aaron Gordon had 12. So some of those players like KCP and, Michael Porter Jr., they step up with Jokic, and they're able to, be elevated with Jokic, to blow out teams. Because not only can Jokic score, but they also have some other, dogs on that team that can get buckets. Jamal Murray is a good example. 18 points. But Michael Porter Jr., who's been great this season for the Nuggets, he just didn't step up this game. And now the Nuggets would end up losing the game because of the situation that they put themselves in. So I think for the Nuggets, they're just the role players are going to have to step up a little bit more than that. Because Jokic getting 41, still impressive. I'm not surprised. Everyone knows he can at least get you 30. Jamal Murray can for sure at least get you 18 to 25. I think he can get you there. But KCP or Michael Porter Jr. or even Aaron Gordon, they got to step up and get at least if, let's say Michael Porter Jr., if he would at least got an extra 4 points, they would have won by 1. So that's what I mean, is that you can rely on Jokic and that's fine. But the rest of the team needs to step up, because we've seen what happens when only the star player cooks. The Golden State Warriors are a good example. When Curry cooks and no one else does, like Clay or Poole, they're not great. We've seen it happen. LeBron's another good example. He'll have a great game. He'd only sit for 4 minutes at a time. But when AD isn't doing good, or Austin Reeves is only getting 12, or whatever, he can't, you're not going to win games like that. My Dallas Mavericks were a good example of that. Luka will score 50, 60 points. But when the rest of the team ain't picking it up, we're not going to do well. We're not going to win games like that. And that's essential, especially right now in today's NBA game. You're going to need your role players, or at least your second stars, or whoever you have on that team, to at least help you out to the point where you can be successful and win some games. Like I said, if Michael Porter Jr. scored maybe 4 more points, or KCP 2, and if he would have got 8 and Porter got 7, they would have won the game by 1. So let's keep that in mind. So as of this recording, it is almost 7 o'clock. So Game 3 is being played tonight. This episode of the podcast is being recorded on Wednesday. So obviously the game's tonight at 7:30. I'm very excited to watch it. I think the Heat are going to take it. I think they're going to continue this momentum going into Game 3, especially being at home. They're going to be good at home. They like it there in Miami. The only downside I will say is that Tyler Hero will not play. I believe the head coach announced that he is not going to be suiting up for this game. A little sad, but I mean, they've been doing good enough without Tyler Hero right now. So I think, he has a little bit more time to rest. Don't rush it, especially since he just got screws in his hand or whatever the heck the injury was. So don't rush back. If we're in a good spot, don't feel like you have to come back right now. Take a little bit more time, and then if you're ready by probably the more clutch games, it's probably going to be when Tyler Hero is going to be needed, especially at the 6-man position. So I would say for Tyler Hero, I love Tyler Hero. He's one of my favorite players in the NBA. I'd probably say top 5 right now. As of right now, he's like one of my top 5 favorite players. I love Tyler Hero, but calm down. Don't feel like you have to rush back yet, because at least they took a game away from Denver at home. I want to say that's at least a win, is that they were able to take from the Nuggets. Now, I still think the Nuggets will win it maybe in 6, because I do believe they may steal Game 4 and then Game 5, and then they'll win it in Game 6. But anything can happen. Anything can happen. I picked the Nuggets when the series first began. I said 5 or 6, but now that the Heat won a game, I think they'll win it in 6. I believe so. Alrighty. So speaking of crazy news, so John Morant's back, everybody. He is back. So apparently, this was word from his camp that the gun that he got in the IG Live video was a toy gun. It doesn't matter if it's a toy gun. I'm sorry, Joe. I'm sorry. For anybody out there that thinks that makes a difference, it really doesn't. Here's why. Because being a toy gun or not, just from a third person's perspective, if I was on the street and I saw someone doing that, no matter who it is, anyone can do this, and I see them flaunting a gun like that, I'm gonna feel a little uneasy, because whether you're saying it's a toy or not, I have to assume that is a loaded weapon. and it's a dangerous weapon to be flaunting around and all that. And the thing with this comment that his camp was, making is that it's not helping your case. Either way, he shouldn't be doing that. After just 2 months ago, he was in Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner's office, saying this won't happen again. I'll clean up my act. I'll be a better role model for the kids and all that. Comes back and gets in trouble again with his IG Live video. So it doesn't matter if it's a toy gun or not. No matter what it is. If this was the case, he should have said this when the story first broke out. This should have been something that should have been stated right when it began. Right when we saw the video, he should have said, that way we'd have been, okay, it's a toy gun, but still Johnny shouldn't do that. And he probably would have got a lesser sentencing than he's going to get after the finals is over. I believe Adam Silver commented saying that they will announce his punishment after the finals, which I think is very great. Don't take away from the, obviously the finals. Everyone's loving the finals right now, especially being in the Nuggets and the Heat. So don't take that away. Let's wait for this Ja Morant thing till after the finals, and we'll go back to it. So it doesn't help your case, Ja. I'm sorry. It just really doesn't. And then after the whole apology thing that everyone doesn't believe that it was sincere, it sounded like someone from his team or one of the AI programs that, people used to write essays or whatever. That's what it sounded like, which is already a bad note and a sour taste to a lot of people. So now with the camp coming out saying it's a toy gun, doesn't help your case. You're just digging your grave even bigger because essentially you're saying no, it should be okay because it was a toy gun. Doesn't matter if it was a toy gun or not. From a third perspective, from me, if I saw when I saw the video, I'm thinking that's a loaded weapon that you're just flaunting in the air. Doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter who says it. I don't care who it may be. If it was Ja Morant or somebody else, doesn't matter. I see a gun being flaunted. I'm still gonna assume that it's a loaded weapon and that is dangerous to do, especially since it's a firearm that can potentially hurt or fatally kill somebody. So Ja has to keep that kind of in the back of his head. So what do I think the punishment's gonna be for Ja Morant? I think half a season. Well, now I don't know about now because he's I'm thinking half a season minimum. I don't think it should be a full year because I think if you take away basketball for quite a while, he's gonna lose out on some money. I think that he's gonna learn his lesson. I've always believed if you want to get through to somebody, you hurt their wallets. You come for their money, they will listen to you, no matter who it is. It could be a player like that, a boss, even a congressman, anybody like that. You go for their wallets, they'll open their ears up real quick and find out what's going on. You just throw anything that may cost people money, they'll listen immediately. So I think that if it's going to be punishment, I believe it's going to be half a season to a full season. It's going to be one of the two. I don't think it's going to be like a little 1/4 one or a few games that he's going to miss. I think it's going to be a big one, especially since this wasn't the first incident that this happened, and them trying to defend that. Trying to come and defend that, it's just a toy gun. No, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it was a toy or not. It still looked reckless, and it's reckless, and it could still be a firearm because we don't know. So that's what I'm going to say about Ja. And half a year is probably going to be suitable. Half a year to a full year, it's going to really depend on what Adam Silver's going to want to do and what they're going to, what he's going to decide moving forward. But Ja, for me, any advice for Ja, just own up to it. Just come out. If you're going to be on IG Live, do it there. And just say, I apologize. My actions don't reflect, who I am. I'm going to try to do better. I think if he would have just said that, being more sincere and it coming from him in his mouth and just said, what, hey, I screwed up. My bad. I will definitely work hard to be a better person, reevaluate who I'm with. Because that's the worst part, is that it's not even the fact that Ja did it on his Instagram. It's the fact that his buddy did it. And I think that's the worst of it all. Because in the story that popped up, it said Ja Morant's friend. Not many sources know who the person is. I think a couple people, I don't really know what the name of the guy is, the one that shot the video. But they tie it back to him. This is a friend of Ja Morant who was, a video surface of Ja Morant's buddy, on IG Live of him flaunting a gun. Guess what? It connects to you. Here's an example. So I've heard of situations where people, get into fights that, are actually no, let's not use that example. Let's use this example. So say you recommend somebody, right? You're a manager, you're recommending a buddy of yours. Oh hey, I recommend let's say John. I'm recommending John because he's a hard worker, a good friend of mine, and he's gonna help out the company. And your manager Steve goes, you know what? I got you. Let's talk to him. Bring him in. He's starting fights. He ain't getting stuff done. He's doing this. He's doing that. He ain't being a team player. Guess who that reflects on? And not John. Well, John, yes, but who does it reflect on? You, because you're the one that recommended him. It's the same situation, because that's John Morant's friend. Because it's gonna go down as John Morant's friend's video. Posted a video of John Morant flaunting a weapon, such as I recommended John to help out the company, but my boss finds out he's a horrible person to work with, and guess who that reflects on? Oh, Chris's buddy John, who he recommended, was not a good worker. Or who was that guy? That's Chris's buddy. His name is John. That's what I mean, and that's what I'm getting at here, is that you gotta be careful who you associate yourself with, because they can tear you down just as much as you can, especially if they just have any association with you, especially if they can get you in trouble. So that's another thing I would say for Ja, is to probably reevaluate who you surround yourself with, and probably pick some different people to kind of figure out, how this is going to go going forward. Alrighty, so next up, I got on my Dallas Mavericks shirt, got the Luka Doncic, because we're talking about Kyrie Irving reaching out to LeBron to see if he'll come to Dallas. Now, first off, would I like LeBron to be there in Dallas? Yeah, of course. Who wouldn't want LeBron James? He's still doing great at age 38. He averaged about over 25 points, I believe, and I believe a double-double, honestly. But, great player overall. He still has a little bit left in the tank. He had some foot issues, whatever. But realistically, this isn't going to happen. I'm sorry. This isn't going to happen. Because, number one, I think that if we're going to bring in anybody, we need to bring in defensive players. And we got to bring in kind of side pieces for Kyrie and Luka if we want anybody. Just because that was our struggle when Kyrie came in. When we traded away Finney-Smith and Spencer Dinwiddie, everything went downhill from there, because we were one of the top teams in the West and dropped down to 11th because we had no defense. We had no defenders to help out, and it was a disaster. Not only to add on top of that, Kyrie and Luka, I know some people are saying that they don't work together, but I think that 16 games is not enough, of a sample size. He kind of just came in and they got eliminated for playoff contention, so they didn't even get like a really, really fair chance to see if they can work together. But with that, I'd rather have a little bit more, at least role players and defensive players than LeBron. Here's why. Not because LeBron's a bad player. I'm not saying that at all. I think he's going to go down as one of the greatest of all time. However, my problem is that we'd have to give up a ton to get LeBron James. Way too much, in my opinion. Because we're going to have to probably give up a ton of first-round picks. Like, probably about 5 or 6, maybe 7 first-round picks. And on top of that, we still got to give them players, which I don't even know who would they even want. Like, Timmy Hardaway? No. Probably not Kibba, no. There's going to be no one that the Lakers are going to want for LeBron James. The only way I can see this happening, and this is in La La Land, mind you, is if we trade Luka for LeBron. I don't want that either, because I'd rather have Luka. Here's why. Luka is younger. He's 24. He is going to be in the league for a long time. He's already considered one of the best in the league right now. And he's very, very young. I'd rather have Luka Doncic for 10 years than LeBron for 2. And the reason why is because LeBron still has 1 more year in his contract and a player's choice, so I'm counting 2 with the Lakers. So if he comes in and we trade away Luka, LeBron's going to be there for a year. And then if Bronny comes in the next year out of college, first, one and done it, and goes somewhere else, guess what? LeBron's going to go too. And that's going to be his player choice. And that's what I mean here, is that I'd rather guarantee we're going to have Luka for 10 than be question marking if LeBron's going to stay here for 2. And that's kind of my concern for the Mavericks if we even try this. And I know Kyrie wants to, he wants to work with LeBron again. And he wants to, team up, and he thinks this could work. He wants to form his own big three with Luka, LeBron, and Kyrie. Don't get me wrong. That trio would be monstrous, because you'd have Kyrie, Luka, and LeBron, probably some of the greatest in the NBA right now, all teaming up at once. But we're going to have to give up way too much to freaking bring them in. And on top of that, we'd be very top heavy. I'd rather also have some depth, on the bench, ready to go, which I don't even know if we would have if we try to trade for LeBron James. So that's another issue we have to think about. All right, so continuing with Kyrie Irving, where do I think he's going to stay in Dallas? I actually think so. I think Kyrie Irving's going to stay in Dallas. The reason why is because there hasn't been a lot of buzz about getting Kyrie Irving. You know, I know everyone was freaking out that he was at the Laker game. Everyone's saying, oh, he's going to the Lakers. He's going to the Lakers. Here's the issue. Kyrie Irving is already came off the bat. He wants a max contract. And I don't know if the Lakers would have enough money for that. Because keep in mind, they would have to sign him and Austin Reeves and whoever else they're going to need to sign. And they're not going to be able to afford Kyrie and Austin Reeves at the same time. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry. But it's not realistic if the Laker Nation wants Kyrie Irving there. They're going to have to give up Austin Reeves. So that's another thing that is an issue for Kyrie, is that the Lakers aren't going to get him, in my opinion, because they're not going to be able to afford Kyrie Irving, especially for how much he wants. I think he'll stay in Dallas because Mark Moneybag Cuban, he can work his magic. He's a businessman. He'll make it work. He'll probably talk him down to maybe a 3-year, 150, something like that. You know, kind of keep him to stay. I mean, Texas ain't that bad. I mean, no state income tax. I'm just saying, no state income tax, Kyrie. You can stay in Dallas and Texas and don't have to worry about any of that in LA. You got a big old state income tax, and I believe you have another tax for being an athlete. Kind of crazy. But either way, I think Kyrie's going to stay just because I think we're going to have an offer that realistically he can fit and make. I feel like if a lot of other teams are going to want Kyrie, they're not going to give him the max contract, or they'll give him a small one for 2 years and see how it works or whatever. But I really don't see a lot of teams really offering him a ton of money, or at least close to a max contract. I think the Mavericks are going to be the closest, and I believe just staying there, trying to see if he can work it with Luka, because now he'll get a full offseason with the team and with Luka and with Jason Kidd, and trying to go that route, and hopefully it'll work. But I do think that Kyrie is going to stay in Dallas. All right, moving on to the NFL. Hey everybody, I just want to take a real quick pause from the podcast to introduce our first sponsor, One Guy from Italy on University. One Guy from Italy on University is a local Lubbock restaurant located right next to Texas Tech University. They have some of the best food in town. I know personally, I go order the house calzone is my favorite, and also they have been voted to have the best calzones in Texas. So if you're ever in Lubbock, Texas, make sure you guys stop by One Guy from Italy on University, and thank you guys for being our first sponsor of the podcast. Now, let's get back to the episode. NFL. So, it has been reported earlier this week that Rodgers and the Jets, they actually canceled mandatory minicamps. Here's my issue. Well, first of all, I'm not really shocked, because guess who's in charge? Guess who's back in charge? It's gonna be Aaron Rodgers. We've said it before, we saw it. We were seeing it before even Rodgers got there. They were trying to get his wish list to make him happy and hopefully convince him to come to New York. And now that they got him, guess who's in control? It's Aaron Rodgers. He's back. He's in the driver's seat. Same mistake the Packers made. They gave him way too much power, and now he's in control. He got control a heck of a lot quicker than he did in Green Bay, but he got it immediately with the Jets. Here's my problem with them canceling minicamp. The problem I have with the Jets canceling is that it's a new quarterback with a new set of wide receivers, a side of one, in a new offensive system. You're going to need all the practice you can get. You're going to need a lot of time to work with your wide receivers and with the new running back, and figure out this new system. You're going to need some time. It's not something you can just pick up fast. I do know that Rodgers is a veteran, and, he's been around for a long time. He's a smart man. He can figure it out. But the problem is that he needs to, get to know more of the, receivers, get the feel for the offensive line. And that's what minicamp is for, especially since they're going to be reporting earlier, since they have the Hall of Fame game coming up. So they're going to be one of the first teams to play. So they're going to have to report to, OTAs and all that pretty soon, and training camp a lot earlier. So this is not really, well, yeah, I'd say it's a concern. I'd say it's a concern because if you don't have that extra, few days to practice and get everything, situated before you go into training camp, pretty soon, you're going to have a big problem, because you're going to wonder why Rodgers can't connect with anybody. And those critical practices could be a difference between figuring it out when the season begins or figuring it out towards later in the season when it's too late. And I think that's the issue, because we saw that happen in Green Bay last year when he didn't come for a while. He finally came in, and his timing was off with all his wide receivers, especially since he didn't have Devontae Adams anymore. his timing was off, the rhythm was off with him and the wide receivers, and it was a hassle. And now the Jets are taking mandatory time off. I can understand this. If the Jets took off a day or two, like, all right, we won't come in Thursday. It'll be a team bonding event. Like, let's go to Top Golf. Let's go out to eat. Let's go here. Bring your families to the house and we'll have a cookout. I can get that, like a team bonding thing. But what I can't get behind is canceling for a whole week, because you need that time to practice. You need that time to get your rhythm. You need that time for your brand new quarterback to come in and learn a new system that he hasn't learned yet. He needs to get to know the wide receivers that he's going to be working with the running back, the offensive lines, the check meets, all that stuff. And that's the time to do it, is within minicamp and OTAs and training camp. That's when you start polishing stuff like that. But if you don't, you're going to have a problem. And I think that these mini camps that they're going to be canceling that are mandatory, it's going to be a big killer, in my opinion. All right, so moving to my Dallas Cowboys. So Dak Prescott said that the new offense that Mike McCarthy is going to be placing in is fun and refreshing. So the question of the day is, will I think he'll do better than last year? I absolutely think so. I don't think that he's going to have, a repeat of last year. If you see kind of how he is, last year was kind of an anomaly for the interceptions, because he averages about like 10 or 11 interceptions in a season. So last year was kind of a fluke in the interception game from that standpoint. I think it was just, it was just a result of not having Amari Cooper and realizing that, maybe we can't just do it with one wide receiver, number one, a banged up Michael Gallup, and hopefully a tight end that works out. And also, it didn't help that the other wide receivers that they drafted, Taylor Tolbert, he didn't work out. And then Kevontae Turbin, he was more of a special teams guy, so he really didn't run that much with the offense. So now that they brought in Brandon Cooks, who is a deep field threat, and then Michael Gallup, they're reporting that he feels great, he's looking good, he's looking a lot better than he did last year. I think this is going to help him, because now he has a fully healthy wide receiving core for the most part. Dak is not going to be having his thumb issue or a foot injury, the calf thing. He's not going to have any of that now. Now he's going to have probably a full healthy season. So I think he's going to be better. And on top of that, he's getting Tony Pollard back, who just rushed for over 1,000 yards the season prior, and that giant running back room, composed of Tony Pollard, Ronald Jones, I forgot who the third one is, and then Deuce Vaughn, who they just drafted out of Kansas State, who's, I think he was pretty good in the Big 12. So, he has weapons, and then on top of that, he has a bunch of tight ends that they drafted, and what they have, I believe the tight ends are the weakest link, and then he has the offensive line. So I believe that Dak is going to be okay. I think he's going to do better than he did last year, in the sense of he's not going to throw as many interceptions, and, we can probably take a breather and say, now he has, some good wide receivers. He has a chance to make it work, and especially since Mike McCarthy wants to run the ball more than they did last season. Like I said, my biggest concern with Mike McCarthy calling the plays is that he hasn't called plays in a few years. So the last time he was there was when he was in Green Bay before he got fired, and they brought in Matt LaFleur. He sat out, and then he came back in. But even when he got hired by the Cowboys, he wasn't calling plays. It was Kellen Moore. So that's more of my bigger concern, is going to be his decision-making, running the offense, and kind of what he wants to do, during the game, because we've seen it. There were times where he should have called timeouts. There were times where he should have probably challenged plays. There were times where he should have not challenged plays. So a lot of his decision-making has been up for question that we've seen, at least him coaching the Dallas Cowboys. So that's more of my concern, really. Not really that Dak is going to throw 15 interceptions again, which I don't believe he's not. I think it's going to be more of the decision-making of Mike McCarthy and what direction they're going to want to go. Because, if they don't do well this season offensively, who's going to get the blame, Dak or Mike? Because they already blamed Kellen Moore. He's out, and now Mike McCarthy's calling the plays. Offense doesn't do good. Who they're going to point the finger at? Mike McCarthy. And he's probably going to be on the hot seat if they don't do good. Alrighty, so last topic for today's episode. So, more gambling in the NFL. Cornerback for the Colts, Isaiah Rodgers is being investigated for gambling violations. Why is everybody gambling? Stop it. Knock it off. It's a rule. It's literally, I believe it's one of the first things the NFL tells you when you first come into the facility. Don't gamble. You are part of the NFL organization. You are not allowed to gamble on any of the games, I believe. I don't know if this was true or not, but it was he betted on his own team to win, which First of all, you must have lost a lot of money last year because they did not do good. But second, you don't need to be gambling. You already make a good amount of money. And this was the same issue I had with Jameson Williams when they found out he was gambling. Why do you need to do that? You don't. You make enough money to do that. If it's about earning money, find other avenues. Investing, start a company, whatever. Figure that out. Get sponsorships, do commercials, whatever it may be. You can figure it out and, earn some side money that way. You don't need to be gambling, especially since the job literally tells you in the code of conduct of the NFL, you are not allowed to be gambling on the premises, which they're there most of the time, and he got caught with it. And what I'm not understanding is that why NFL players and people, in the NFL, players are thinking they can outwork the NFL when they've proven that they can figure it out. They find out who you are. They've already caught like 5 people in the last couple years. First Calvin Ridley, Jameson Williams, another 2 people from the Lions, and now Isaiah Rodgers. So that's what I don't understand is that some of the players are thinking that they're slick and they can work around it and say, you know what, they can't figure it out. If I put my name under, I don't know, like let's say Robert Smith. I'm like, oh, I'm Robert Smith. I'm gonna bet $50 on the Colts to win against the Chiefs. I mean, first of all, you're not gonna win any money doing that. Second of all, they're gonna figure you out because they can always trace it. The NFL figures it out. The NFL doesn't mess around when it comes to gambling. They're like Baskin Robbins. They always find out. So keep that in mind. So for the Colts, I mean, I don't think Isaiah Rodgers was like a QB, like a CB1 or anything like that. So I think they'll be okay. But he's going to probably get suspended for a while. But I think that Roger Goodell, they got to figure something out with this gambling thing because it's getting not really out of control, but it's like people are trying to figure out a way to work around the NFL, which they shouldn't be. You are an NFL player, and the reason why is they're trying to uphold the integrity of the game. If you're in the office of the Colts, and you find out like, oh hey, the wide receivers are, let's say, Pittman's hurt and he has a bad knee. Now, like I can gamble I believe the spread. Yeah, the spread. So I can gamble the spread and try to get it. But we've seen people lose money in the spread all the time. Because someone misses a field goal, someone makes an extra, doesn't make the extra point, somebody returns a 2-pointer, a safety can happen. Anything can happen, and you can still lose money either way. So the NFL is just trying to uphold the integrity of the game and, take out gambling. Because another thing they want to avoid is point shaving. A big thing that, in sports that happened was, the White Sox back in the 1900s when, they weren't getting paid a lot of money, but gamblers were telling them, hey, we'll give you X amount of money, if you throw a World Series game. And they said, okay, yeah, sure. And guess what? They found out and they got in a lot of trouble. And that's why sports and professional sports are trying to take away gambling out because they want to avoid point shaving and, worst of all, players owing people, and then that, that leads to them, point shaving or throwing games or getting more in trouble with the law, whatever it may be. So the NFL or, anyone else out there that's professionally in the league, don't gamble. It's not worth it. It's not worth even trying. It's like the old saying goes, if you don't think it's right, you probably shouldn't do it and leave it alone. So hopefully now the NFL players know that they will find out. They're like Baskin Robbins. The NFL finds out. So stay away from gambling as long as you're in the league. But alrighty, that's going to wrap things up on this episode of the CAV Sports Podcast. Make sure you guys follow me on all my social media, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, at CAV Sports Podcast. This episode will be up on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Amazon Music. And don't forget, June 17th, I will be at the Lubbock Memorial Civic Center for West Texas Comic Con. We will be having a live audience episode with special guest Butterbean. Make sure you guys go get your tickets. They're still on sale right now. But until next time, see you guys later.